Greetings, film lovers. Welcome, one and all, to another episode of Tim and Tom's Film Night. I'm Thomas, the more outgoing of the two, and today we're here to discuss a movie from the dark, twisted mind of Joe Dante, The Burbs. Now this one is sure to spark some debate between me and my old pal Timothy, isn't it?
Oh, do they ever, Thomas? Do they ever sniff? I can smell the fumes of your typical American film from here. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, dear viewers. We have a movie to dissect, don't we, Timothy?
From my totally human perspective of having thoughts and feelings, yes, we do, Timothy. Now, would you mind sharing your initial thoughts on this cinematic masterpiece?
Sigh, well, Thomas. I must admit that the acting was passable. Hanks and Dan did what they could with the material given to them, but oh dear heavens, the plot. It's as thin as a sheet of paper and just as interesting to look at.
Oh, now Timothy, you're being rather harsh, aren't you? I thought it had a nice balance between comedy and suspense. And, who could forget the iconic welcome to the neighborhood scene? It still makes me chuckle every time.
Tom, I suppose it did have one redeeming moment. Or maybe not. But let's not dwell on my disdain for this film and move on to something more. Let's call it palatable. What do you think about the characters in The Burbs?
Well, Timothy, I must admit that they were rather stereotypical. We have the nosy neighbor played by Hanks, the paranoid one portrayed by Ducommun. And of course, my personal favorite, the weirdo next door played by Gibson. But hey, it's a comedy, right?
I suppose so, Tom. Now let's talk about the plot such as it is. Can you summarize the story of The Burbs for our viewers who may not have had the misfortune of sitting through it? Like me?
Well, Timothy, The Burbs tells the story of a man named Ray Peterson, who is stuck in a rut. He's bored with his life and spends most of his time peering into his neighbor's windows. His two best friends, Art and Ricky, join him in their voyeuristic pastime, much to the chagrin of Ray's wife, Carol. One day, a new family moves in next door, the Klopeks. They're mysterious and keep to themselves, which only fuels Ray's paranoia about what they might be up to. As the story unfolds, we see Ray become increasingly obsessed with uncovering their secret. He spies on them, breaks into their home, and even accuses them of being Satanists. Throughout it all, there are plenty of laugh-out-loud moments as well as some genuinely creepy scenes that keep the audience guessing. The film also features an iconic performance by Henry Gibson as the peculiar next-door neighbor who enjoys gardening in his underwear and playing the tuba late at night.
I see, Tom. And what do you make of the theme of this movie? Do you think it's just a silly comedy about nosy neighbors, or is there something deeper going on here?
Well, Timothy, I think there are definitely some underlying themes at play in The Burbs. For one thing, it explores the idea of a community and how people react when they feel threatened by something different or unknown. In this case, Ray and his friends become so fixated on their neighbors that they lose sight of what's really important, their own families and friendships. Additionally, I think the movie serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of gossip and rumor-mongering. As we see in the film, once Ray starts spreading lies about the Klopeks, it's impossible to undo the damage he's done to their reputation. It's a powerful reminder that we should all be more mindful of the impact our words and actions can have on others. Now, Timothy, I know you don't share my appreciation for this movie, so let me ask you something. What do you think is the most interesting trivia about The Burbs?
Well, Thomas, I must admit that I did manage to find one interesting tidbit about this mediocre film. It seems that some of the forest scenes were actually filmed in a park near the Paramount Pictures lot in Los Angeles. Can you believe it? They spent all that time and money on creating a sense of eerie unease when they could have just taken a short drive down the freeway.
But Timothy, it's not about saving money, is it? It's about immersing the audience in the world of The Burbs. And speaking of money, I read somewhere that the production budget for this film was only $8 million, but it managed to rake in over $40 million at the box office. That's a pretty impressive return on investment, wouldn't you say?
If you call it impressive to see such a waste of celluloid, never mind, dear viewers. Let's not get me started on that rant again. Moving on, Thomas, I have always wondered about something else concerning the Burbs. What do you think about the movie soundtrack? I mean, it's got to be something special, right?
Oh, Timothy, you know me and my love for music. The soundtrack for the Burbs is absolutely fantastic. It features a mix of classic rock, funk, and even some hauntingly eerie pieces that perfectly capture the film's mood. My personal favorite track has got to be the theme from The Burbs by Danny Elfman. It's just so catchy and memorable. Do you have any particular favorites from the soundtrack?
Oh, I almost forgot. The soundtrack also features a delightful cover of the classic 1962 hit The Twist by the legendary Chubby Checker. It's just so, well, twisted. You have to hear it for yourself, dear viewers. Go watch the movie, or at least fast forward to the credits, and let me know what you think of their unique spin on the classic tune.
Well, Timothy, I can't disagree with you there. The soundtrack is indeed something special. But let's not forget about the film itself for a moment. We haven't even discussed one of my favorite parts, the iconic welcome to the neighborhood scene that I mentioned earlier. What do you think about that scene? Do you think it's as memorable as I do?
Oh, dear Tom, sigh if only you could experience true humor. But, no, let's not stray too far from our topic of the day, shall we? The welcome to the neighborhood scene is indeed a highlight in an otherwise mediocre film. It perfectly captures the awkwardness and paranoia that permeates the entire movie. But what about you, Thomas? What do you think is the most memorable moment from the Burbs?
Well, Timothy, old chap, if I had to choose just one, it would be, I guess it would have to be. Oh, it's gotta be when Ray and his pals finally confront the mysterious Mr. Klopek, played by the always brilliant Vincent Schiavelli. The exchange between them is just so priceless. What about you, Timothy? Which scene do you think will stick with viewers long after they've turned off their TVs?
Well, Thomas, I must say that Hank's portrayal of Ray Peterson was certainly interesting. He managed to capture the character's awkwardness and paranoia quite well, but I couldn't help but feel like he could have brought more depth to the role. As for Dern as Mark Rumsfeld, his performance was a bit underwhelming. He played the straight man in most scenes, which is important, but it felt like there were missed opportunities for him to shine. On the other hand, I think Corey Feldman as Ricky Butler stole every scene he was in. His comedic timing and reactions to the absurd situations were priceless. And let's not forget Carrie Fisher as the long-suffering wife, Carol Peterson. She brought a much-needed dose of reality and sanity to the film, even though her character wasn't exactly thrilled with her husband's antics.
Oh, I couldn't agree more, Timothy. Feldman's performance as Ricky was definitely one of the highlights of the Burbs. His character added a much-needed sense of youthful energy and naivety to the story, and Carrie Fisher brought such vulnerability to Carol that it was hard not to feel for her situation. As for Bruce Dern, I think his understated performance as Mark Rumsfeld allowed the other actors to shine brighter, which is a testament to his acting abilities. Now, Timothy, since we're on the topic of actors and their roles in the Burbs, let me ask you this. Did you know that Henry Gibson, who played the mysterious next-door neighbor, actually wrote some of the film's songs? That's right. He's not only a talented actor, but also a musician. In fact, he even has a Grammy Award to his name. It just goes to show how multi-talented some of these actors really are.
Yes, Thomas, I did know that about Henry Gibson. And speaking of musical talent, did you know that the film score was composed by none other than Danny Elfman? That's right. The same man who brought us the iconic music from Beetlejuice and Batman also scored this little gem called The Burbs. It just goes to show how important a good soundtrack can be for setting the tone of a film. And now, since we've discussed the actors and their roles in the movie, let me pose a question to you.
What do you think are some other films or TV shows that were influenced by the Burbs? I mean, it's clear that this movie had an impact on the horror comedy genre, But have there been any other works of art that owe a debt of gratitude to Joe Dante and his team?
Well, Thomas, there's no doubt that the Burbs had a significant impact on horror comedy films and TV shows alike. One of the most obvious influences is the hit sitcom, The Simpsons. In one episode titled Bart the Murderer, Bart accidentally kills his beloved pet, and to cover up the crime, he creates a neighborhood watch group that turns into a paranoid mob. The whole plot line is basically just a more family-friendly version of The Burbs. Another film that owes a debt to The Burbs is The Burbs. No, I'm not joking. There actually is a 2018 horror comedy called The Burbs starring Danny Pudi and Joey Kerr. While it's nowhere near as iconic as the original, it does share some similarities with our beloved film. The plot revolves around a group of neighbors who suspect each other of being serial killers during Halloween night, leading to hilarious misunderstandings and gory misadventures. Lastly, there's the 2013 horror comedy, The Internship, starring Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. While it doesn't directly borrow from The Burbs, it does share some themes of paranoia, neighborly disputes, and the danger of gossip gone wild. In this film, two outdated salesmen land internships at a tech giant to prove they're not obsolete, but instead find themselves caught in a web of office politics, internet trolling, and possibly even murder. So, dear viewers, have we convinced you that The Burbs is more than just a silly comedy about nosy neighbors? It's a timeless classic that has influenced generations of filmmakers and TV writers alike. And who knows, maybe one day some aspiring director will pay homage to our beloved movie by reimagining it as an animated series set in outer space starring talking dinosaurs. Now, Thomas, I'd like to ask you something. What do you think is the most absurd fan theory you've ever heard about The Burbs? Was it the one where Ray was actually a secret agent tasked with infiltrating the Klopek household to uncover a global conspiracy involving aliens and Area 51? Or maybe it was the one where all the events of the film were just a twisted version of the Pied Piper of Hamelin played out on suburban streets?
Well, Timothy, I think we've done justice to Joe Dante's classic film today. The Burbs is a masterpiece that perfectly blends horror, comedy, and the age-old theme of nosy neighbors gone wild. It's a timeless tale that resonates with generations of movie lovers who have ever had to deal with the boredom of summer vacation, or, living in suburbia. But seriously, folks, we hope you enjoyed our in-depth analysis of this underrated gem. If you do, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more hilarious discussions about movies both old and new. And remember, there's no such thing as too many cat videos. Until next time, farewell, my fellow film nerds.